Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Assalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the last lecture, we posed the following questions and answered a few. Is science the answer? Does science have the solution for everything? What is the role of science in man's life today versus the role of religion? What is Islamic position on science, and is there a contradiction between Islam and science? What is the role of religion, Islam in this case, in man's life, and is it outdated? Has science replaced it? Continuing from the last lecture and what was said in the show I referred to, let's clarify a few additional points about Islam and science. Number one, as indicated, Islam and science do not contradict each other, and each has a role to play. In short, science is man-made. It is product of human intellect, and it is supposed to be used to serve, to facilitate, to make life easier and comfortable for mankind, and ultimately fulfill mankind's physical needs. Man uses science as an instrument, a tool to discover, explore, and innovate. However, because science is man-made, it is bound by human mind and cannot go further. It cannot explain anything beyond man's immediate physical boundary or intellectual capability. Man is not perfect, therefore science cannot be perfect and answer everything. The knowledge through science is gained gradually and is prone to errors. As such, most of it is experimental. Science cannot prove everything. It can make educated guesses based on similar scientific studies as to why things occur. Hence, many things remain as purely theoretical until may be proven with technology, and some may never be proven, such as creation of universe. We may have some guesses and theories, but we will never know exactly how it was created because we were never there when it happened. Science does not deal with moral, ethical, and behavioral issues. Behavioral science, like psychology, deal with how things are and perhaps how human psyche works, but not how things should be. And of foremost, science may fulfill man's physical need, but definitely not the spiritual need. Science is not divine revelation, but it can provide a mean to the betterment of mankind and to a better understanding of God's creation and its purpose. The Quran says, "And he has subjected to you from him all that is in heavens and on earth. Behold, in that are signs indeed for those who reflect." The reflection here referred to is nothing but the scientific spirit which leads to understanding of the discoveries in the creation. Number two, on the other hand, religion, and specifically Islam, deals with moral, ethical, and behavioral issue on how things should be. Islam fulfills man's spiritual need and gives him a sense of purpose. Science cannot deal with societal issues like injustice, corruption, and illicit activities, but Islam does and provides solutions to social ills. Islam works on the society by working on its individual members one by one and instills a sense of social responsibility on each member in order to make up a just, peaceful, and prosperous society. Islam helps one to have patience and hope in difficult times and sense of appreciation and contentment in easy times. Islamic rituals give the believer a sense of peace, belonging, and appeal through rituals and supplications, none of which science can deal with. Of course, here again, we're talking about real Islam, not the Islam perceived by its critics today based on behavior demonstrated by certain Muslims or groups. Number three, science and Islam can coexist and result in more ethical and prosperous society as they did back in Islamic golden era when science flourished and so many God-conscious Muslim scientists laid the foundation to the modern science of today in many fields. They discovered many things and innovated many things, some of them still in use today. The difference between a non-Muslim scientist and a true Muslim scientist is the moral values a Muslim scientist holds, and as such would never engage in creating anything that could harm mankind. His Islamic moral teachings, akhlaq, and his sense of accountability would never allow him to engage in anything destructive, including weapons of mass killing, be it a conventional bomb or a chemical, biological, or nuclear weapon. Anything that can indiscriminately kill many innocent people and destroy so much property. A true Muslim scientist will observe God's signs, appreciates them, learn from them, and will work hard to create things to serve God and His creations, including mankind, not on things that destroy them directly or indirectly. A Muslim scientist will hold himself accountable before God and then before fellow human beings, therefore never does anything immoral. Something cannot be said about a secular scientist. A secular physicist has deep knowledge about atomic material, its science, its math, its property, and its potential harm, yet still proceeds to build an atomic bomb, as we have witnessed in the Western history. Are these people insane? No. There were some of the smartest mathematicians and scientists ever known, and they knew exactly what they were doing and its ramifications, yet they did it. That is the difference. And by the way, this is true not just about scientists, rather any secular common person versus any true believer in all walks of life, in all fields, including politicians and government officials. I say true Muslim because there are so-called Muslims who do exactly opposite of what they should as a Muslim and opposite of what I said above. Now that we covered the fact both Islam and science can coexist and complement each other for much better results, let's recall at the beginning of last lecture, I referred to a show I watched where the host was basically saying Islam is irrelevant and science has the answers. Then he had a guest in the following program, and the guest reinforced the host's argument, and as an evidence, he said, Dr. Surush, who is a prominent Muslim intellectual and reformer, looks up to two men as source of learning and benefit. One is Khomeini, and the other is Dr. Shariati, who was also called a reformer. And quoted from one of Shariati's books, where he said, science is source of all problems and instrument of colonialism. Then the guest continued and said, these are the kind of thinking among not just common Muslims, but rather their intellectuals or reformers, such as Surush and Shariati, implying the so-called Islamic government they are holding in contempt operates under such religious thinking and teachings. Well, Firstly, let's just say the Quran, which is the constitution of Islam, disagrees with above assertion and encourages, actually enjoins learning, thinking, knowledge, and scientific discoveries, as we have discussed through numerous examples. The Islamic Golden Age is the proof. On the contrary, science flourished and Muslims became masters of science for several centuries. Science and Islam are intimately linked. Islam not only places a high premium on science, but positively encourages the pursuit of science. It considers science as an essential prerequisite for human survival. As the Quran points out, it is through learning and knowledge one gets to see God's signs and recognizes and draws from his power and appreciates his creation in all humbleness. Those who are anti-science, Muslim or not, are enjoying and benefiting from science and technology at this very moment in all aspects of their lives, from cars and planes to cell phones and computers, including Soroush and as did Shariati and Khomeini. Secondly, unlike other faiths, true Islam needs no reform, hence no reformers. In fact, it is the other way around. True Islam needs to be revived and rediscovered from all the innovations, distortions, and fluff added later by people for their own purpose. Indeed, in true Islam, there is room to expand the application of canon in many areas within Quranic framework to meet new conditions and situations. And also, there are many areas which Islam is silent, hence it is totally up to man to innovate and govern. However, the fundamental belief in God, the message of prophets, their instructions, and the moral teachings are there for all times and do not change. Just like many fundamental rules in math do not change, nor does the human nature. Thirdly, likes of this program's host and guest who come from a Muslim background think all the grievances and problems, political or otherwise, they face in their nation is due to Islam, and that those in charge of their so-called Islamic government are operating under Islamic principles. They see Islam through the lens of their despotic Islamic government officials, through the lens of ISIS or Taliban and other fringe groups. They don't know the fact that while ISIS tortured and beheaded their captives, the Prophet of Islam freed 4,000 captured fighting men from the enemy camp in the Battle of Ahzab. Do these two represent the same religion? Some of these frustrated opposition members, especially political analysts, cannot overpower or overcome their repressive government, hence resort to attacking Islam because they think what they see is the real Islam. They do not know or understand often what few Muslims do, especially those in power, and what they are supposed to do are two different things. They do not see or understand that Islam and what they call their savior, science, can coexist. Of course, some of them do have major issues with Islam, religion, and God in general. That is another, a different topic. A true Islamic government with true Islamic operators in charge does not exist anywhere in the world today. You can refer to my lecture called Islam, State and Politics for more details. The Islamic leaders, governments, and groups today who claim to implement Sharia, they are neither qualified to implement Sharia nor qualified to run a government because they do not understand or have expertise on neither. Their actions prove my point. Fourthly, they believe Islam is the reason behind the lack of progress in their country, which is not true. Of course, this is a topic that needs a series of lectures to itself, but in short, we can say among many reasons, internal and external in nature, there are two prominent internal reasons, in my opinion. First one is, after the Islamic Golden Era and the Mongols' attack and the destruction they left behind throughout Muslim empire, many Muslims gradually withdrew from innovation and advancement in science as they considered them relevant only to this world. Instead, they started looking more inward and into things like Sufism and mysticism, along with other thoughts and philosophies which were major departures from mainstream Islam and the Quran, and created divisions and sects among Muslims and themselves, especially with various schools of thought like Ash'ari and the Mu'tazila, which dragged Muslims into never-ending debates occupying their minds and times. As a result, no more priority in higher learning, advancement in science, and emphasis on educational institutions or worldly causes. The second factor was the fact Muslims were taught to put emphasis on hereafter, and that for any good deed you will have rewards in hereafter. So focus on deeds that take you to paradise and do not put much thought and effort on things that benefit you in this life only. So much so that they forgot all about this life and withdrew to seclusion and austerity. Of course, no one denies that paradise should be one's ultimate concern. However, it was taken to an extreme where it demotivated Muslims from higher education, advancement, and ultimately the progress they enjoyed in the Golden Era. This trend has continued till today, hence a major factor in lack of progress. In the meanwhile, West took what they had learned from Muslims and sprinted in education, science, and discoveries, leaving Muslims way behind. Today, while Muslims' focus has mainly been the next life, in Western and secular societies, the focus has been immediate benefit and return in this world and in this life. With such way of thinking, Muslims may not see immediate benefit in a tangible way, whereas Westerners see their benefits totally opposite. As such, if they do something or not do something, it is because they know the benefit or harm from it here and now, not after they die. They make advancements and progress because they can see the immediate and tangible results and rewards. In short, who would prefer cash over IOU? Muslims, on the other hand, are not motivated to do much since they cannot see the immediate tangible return. Ironically, Islam recognizes the rewards for hereafter and this life. This life's actions are so important in Islam because they shape the results for hereafter. The Quranic view is that Muslims should seek hereafter through what God has given them in this life, not through seclusion and austerity. If God gave you wealth, use it to help people. Do not squander it or hoard it. If God gave you power, use it to establish justice, peace, and security, not injustice, oppression, war, and killing. That is how you secure success in hereafter. Islam recognizes the downfall of ignorance, which can impact one's life in all aspects. Hence, education and knowledge have been emphasized so much. Islam recognizes an educated society can prosper economically, socially, politically, and militarily. From Islamic perspective, a nation that is powerful both militarily and economically, it can defend itself and never be subjugated by others. One can measure the emphasis on education in the number of higher learning universities within developed countries versus the third world countries. And from there, you can see how prosperous these nations are. Another factor for lack of progress, which is not exclusive to Muslim nations, is that wherever the pursuit of knowledge or education was discouraged, it had more to do with autocratic regimes in charge than the ideologies they seem to espouse. The case of Soviet Union under the Bolshevik in the early days of October Revolution and that of China during the Cultural Revolution can be cited as two glaring examples from the last century. In these two anti-religion countries, hundreds of thousands of intellectuals were imprisoned and killed or forced into manual labor in factories and fields. Organized religion was banned and replaced by secular ideals of Marxism and Leninism. That is another factor in recent centuries for Muslim nations and their oppressive regimes who saw education as a threat to their survival. As a reminder to the critics, here I provide a few examples on Muslim scientists' influence and contribution to the world based on the Quranic inspiration and Islamic teachings. During the Golden Era, Muslims contributed greatly to the enhancement of art, science, and cultural growth of mankind. At its peak around the 10th century, while Paris and London were places of muddy streets and shacks, Cordoba, the capital of Muslim Spain, had pavements, street lighting, 300 public baths, parks, palaces, 100,000 houses, and many libraries. There were close to 500,000 books in a single library, whereas the entire France contained much less than this figure. The oldest university in the world was established in 895 CE in Morocco, which operates till today by Muslims. It was the first institution to award degrees according to different levels of study in Islamic studies, mathematics, and medicine. Of course, that followed by second oldest, which is Al-Azhar in Cairo in 970. By the 9th century, Islamic medical practice had advanced to hospitals with wards, doctors who had to pass tests. Baghdad General Hospital incorporated many innovations. The rich and the poor received equal attention. The destitute, upon discharge, received 5 gold pieces to sustain them during recovery. Baghdad, Cairo, Cordoba had hospitals open to both male and female patients, staffed by male and female attendants. These medical centers had pharmacies, a system of interns and nurses. Islamic medicine is one of the most famous and best known facets of Islamic civilization. But they excelled in many other fields as well. For example, the Muslims used paper 200 years before Europe, invented spherical trigonometry in the late 10th century, solved equations of the third and fourth order, and developed differential and integral mathematics. They discovered laws of motion, including planetary motion, and taught them in their universities. There's hardly a field of knowledge where Muslims did not research, think, investigate, explore, or invent. And the greater part of these achievements were passed on to Europe, enabling its intellectual and cultural renaissance, a historical reality now beginning to be widely acknowledged in the West. Islam is a rational religion. Repeatedly, the Quran appeals to mankind to use their reason and especially their common sense in matter of religion. Experience shows that a large measure of free thought is absolutely necessary to human progress. To most modern Westerners, religious commitment and free thought are incompatible. However, the experience and history of Muslims prove that they are perfectly compatible. In the early centuries of Islam, an intense faith in God was combined with free thought in every field of knowledge, for Islam held nothing in human knowledge so sacred as to be immune from criticism. From Islamic view, the creator of the universe had given man the gift of reason, which is considered by Muslims as the highest gift to be used freely in the name of God with the purpose of pursuing that which is good and avoiding that which is evil. There is no priesthood in Islam. However, the wisest and the most learned men became their natural leaders. From the writings of numerous Eastern and Western scholars, it is evident that modern science owes its very existence to Islam. The new spirit of inquiry and the new methods of experiment, observation, and measurement on which modern science is based are all contributions of those who followed the teachings of Islam. At the end, from Islamic point of view, religion and science each have their own role, and both can coexist to achieve Kamal, the completion, and humanity God intended for mankind. Science is not exclusive to the West, nor do they have the monopoly on technology, as we have seen in recent decades with rise of China and other Asian countries. Furthermore, in order to modernize, you don't have to westernize. Muslims can take the good and leave the bad. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.